Hi, everyone. This is Phil Travis here, your professor here at EOU, and this is a guide for paper writing for History 201. You see here, obviously, the documentary history that we're using in the class. So, in the class, of course, we have our textbook, Give Me Liberty, and we have the companion documentary history, Voices of Freedom. Voices of Freedom is a collection, as you guys have been reading, of primary source documents throughout the time periods that we're talking about. For the paper, um, I want you to select one of the chapters for the section of the class that we're in. Okay, so basically, covering the material that we've covered in class. So for the first paper option, you can choose one of the chapters from Voices of Freedom from the beginning until through the American Revolution. You can choose any of those chapters. Choose one of those chapters, and then I want you to use the primary sources in that chapter to write a short historical paper. You will write two of these during the term. There are 3 chances to write these during the term, and if you choose to do all 3, I will drop the lowest grade. The first option comes at the end of week 5. I highly recommend that everybody do that option because you get it out of the way, and that way if something happens, you only have to do one more. One of the most important things for a class like this, for a paper like this, and I know this sounds silly, but one of the most basic things to do to assure yourself um, that you do decently on this is to follow the directions. You would be amazed at how many times people, um, lose points and lose significant points for not following the directions. If you follow the directions, it's going to help you out. It's the most obvious first step to do. So I want papers that are 2.5 to 3 pages in length. Um, I don't want huge extra spaces at the top of a paper. I don't want extra spaces between the paragraphs. I want everything evenly spaced, double spaced the whole paper, font 12, Times New Roman. I want at least 2.5 pages, which is about 650, 600 words, somewhere in there. If you go under that, you're going to lose some big points, so don't go under that. You can go over it a page or two. Don't go insanely over it, though. I don't want a 7-page paper. Stay within the guidelines. Should be double spaced, font 12, New Times Roman, paragraph form. So, 3 to 4, maybe 5, 6 paragraphs. It's a short paper. Paragraph form, introduction, body, conclusion. I want you to use a chapter, like I said, from Voices of Freedom, and use at least 3 sources from that chapter to construct a historical argument about the particular time period. Do not plagiarize. So, any information, an idea that is not common knowledge and is not your own, you need to cite where you're getting it from. So, when in doubt, cite. Always cite. Okay? Now, if you only use one source for a paragraph, you can just cite the paragraph at the end of the paragraph. But if you use multiple sources in the paragraph, you need to cite at the end of each sentence. Now, for this paper, since we're all just going to be using the book Voices of Freedom, then what I want you to do is I want you to have the book citation for Voices of Freedom at the top of the page. So at the top of the page, write out the full title of the book, the author's name, the full title of the book, and the publisher information, and put that at the top, like as though it's like the paper's title. And then for the paper, as you write the paper, just use parenthetical citations and put the document that you're citing. So like the De Las Casas document that we read, just put in parentheses at the end of the sentences before the period, put in parentheses, De Las Casas, okay, or Paine, Common Sense. It'll be obvious where you're getting it from. So because you are not citing a different book, it's okay to just put the document in the parenthetical citations and put the book information at the top of the paper. Okay? Is that pretty clear? I hope that's pretty clear. Email me if it's not. I want to briefly also just talk about writing. The paper should be in paragraph form. That means you have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Arguably, an introduction is the most important part of a paper. It is the first thing that the individual reads, and it is where you either gain or lose the reader. So what you want to do with your introductions is you want to make your introductions enticing. You want to make it interesting. You want to make it something that the reader wants to read. And so what you can do with the introduction, provide, in some cases you might provide a sentence or two that is like a narrative hook, where you provide, kind of a vivid visual for the reader of a first-hand account. Maybe you provide imagery from De Las Casas' view of his experiences of native people in Hispaniola, on the island of Hispaniola. And then from there, maybe you pose a question and you explain what the argument is. Okay? The introduction should introduce the topic. What is the topic? Why are we asking these questions? What do they mean for us? What's the argument that you're making? So you don't have to worry about reinventing the wheel. You're not going to come up with an argument that's never been made before. That's one of the most difficult things that academics do. But this is an extra exercise in using primary source documents to construct an argument. So make an argument. Don't summarize. Make a specific argument and argue for it throughout the paper. So in the body, 2 to 4 paragraphs in the body, provide the evidence. Use the examples, the documents that you're using. Provide the evidence and argue for your main point. Thesis statements, by the way, are often best if they're straightforward as possible. And so I have a basic thesis statement presented there for you. It's an overall point. The American Revolution was successful less because of decisions made by Americans and more because of the influence of the international world. That's an example of a pretty clear thesis statement, and then the paper could be written in defense of that by showing that, maybe for example, showing how the French had already decided to side with the Americans before Saratoga. I don't know. It's just an example. But make sure your thesis statement is a straightforward and direct sentence. And oftentimes, the simplest sentences are the best. When you write, it's often best to try and be as simple and straightforward as you can be, because it communicates better. Okay. All right, so hopefully that's pretty clear. And if you have any questions, email me. And I'm looking forward to reading everybody's papers due at the end of week 5. All right, guys.